Hello, I hope you're well. Welcome or welcome back to my channel, and welcome to today's video, which is all about the biggest books on my physical TBR. Now, if I had to talk about my brand on BookTube, I would say it's definitely historical fiction, I would say it's definitely standing Helen Mirren, and I would say it is absolutely thick books. I love big books, and I cannot lie. I don't know what it is about them, but it takes a lot for a book to intimidate me based on the sheer number of pages. So I figured we'd do a quick video talking about the 10 longest books that I have on my physical TBR. So why don't we dive right in? So the first two books that I'm going to talk about are actually omnibuses, so they're bind-ups of multiple novels by the same author. The first one, though, is this stunner titled The Three Novels of New York by Edith Wharton. So this is a bind-up of The House of Mirth, The Custom of the Country, and The Age of Innocence, and I first saw this edition somewhere on Bookstagram, and it promptly ended up in my shopping cart because there was something about this cover that was just really striking, and I realized when I saw it that I don't think I've ever read an Edith Wharton from cover to cover. I think I read excerpts from The Age of Innocence, potentially, but apart from seeing like film adaptations of some of these, I've never actually read them. So I know absolutely nothing about the customs of the country, know very little about House of Mirth, and only have a vague idea of what The Age of Innocence is about, but it's definitely the setting that is a draw for me, because these are stories about the Golden Age or the Gilded Age in New York, the old moneyed class when they had mansions on Madison Avenue, Park, that sort of thing, and that is an interesting time. Plus, New York is home. Like, the city is 50 miles away by train when Corona isn't rampant. Like, I go into the city to socialize. I used to work down there before we started working remotely, so it has a special place in my heart, and I'm very interested in actually experiencing Edith Wharton's writing, because she is one of those, like, modern classic authors that I think of. So yeah, that's really it. But this edition with the 3 novels is just under 800 pages. It's 770 pages long. But again, can we just appreciate this really fun cover? Look at the front. Look at the back. Like, I just think this is going to be a lot of fun. The next book is one that I am going to butcher the title of, but it is a bind-up of a trilogy called Christian Levinsdratter by Sigrid Undset. And I was really attracted to this book because it is a historical trilogy. It is set in 14th century Norway, which is a new setting to me. I think I've only read one other book set somewhere in Scandinavia, so I was intrigued, but also this won a Nobel Prize in Literature, and I loved the fact that it was a translated work, and it was a woman in translation, because that is something that I'm trying to read more widely, and so this kind of ticked a lot of boxes for me, but it is thick, and this is one of those books that is definitely a little bit intimidating, but it is a book that I think that I will genuinely enjoy, because it seems to be about this very headstrong Norwegian woman and like this epic romance and all of the like chaos and melodrama that ensues in this like really interesting, unique setting. So that's kind of what I've gleaned from reading the back flap. It is a book that is over 1,000 pages long. So it is massive, but it is, bear in mind, 3 books smooshed together into this one bind-up. I do know that it has been featured prominently behind me in many a video, to the point that one of my OG subscribers actually bought it and was just like, I did not realize how big it was or how heavy. It is, in fact, heavy, my friends. So, yes, very excited about this one as well. I am, fingers crossed, that nothing goes pear-shaped in the world with the pandemic. I will actually be going to Scandinavia, Iceland in particular, in October. So I feel like this is a book that if I can at least maybe read one by then would really set the mood and the tone. So something they want to get to sooner rather than later. Now we're moving on to massive tomes that are just single books. And the first of which is nonfiction, and it is Romantic Outlaws by Charlotte Gordon. And this is actually a dual biography on Mary Wollstonecraft and Mary Shelley, which I got, I think, for my birthday, actually, this year. And I've heard amazing, amazing things about it. So I am really looking forward to sinking my teeth into this one finally. But it is a massive biography. It is over 500 pages long. So definitely not the longest book on this list, but it's big. And so what I have heard about it, though, is that it's actually quite a quick read, which when a book is thick like this and it's a quick read, that is a really good sign. But as I mentioned, it is a dual biography on Mary Wollstonecraft and her daughter Mary Shelley. Mary Wollstonecraft was this feminist in, I want to say, the late 18th century, so the late 1700s, and she is the mother of Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein. But Mary Wollstonecraft actually died, I think, giving birth to Mary Shelley. So they have this connection because they are mother-daughter, but they would not have known each other in their lifetimes. But it should be interesting to see how these two tales, these two lives, are woven together. So yeah, the next book I think might actually be the longest book on this TBR of thick books, and that is A Breath of Snow and Ashes by Diana Gabaldon, which I believe is number 6 in the series. I'm currently on book 4, so this is a couple books away in the Outlander book series for me. I think this ends up being kind of where the show has left off if you're following the show on Starz. So I haven't read the back because I don't want to spoil anything for me yet, because I know what's happening in the show, but I would like some surprises in store for myself. But yeah, this is a book that when I bought it, the first thing I thought was, holy shit, like, look at this. And then when I brought it home and I looked at the page count, which I think is, here it is, hold on. It is 1,438 pages. I was like, Jesus H. Roosevelt Christ? Is that how she says it? Anyway, it's a 1,400 page mass market book. And I was like, this might be the longest book I've read or will read in a very long time. And this book is actually almost the same size as my mass market copy of War and Peace that I read in high school. Like, War and Peace is maybe like 20-30 pages longer. But this, when I get to it later this year, is going to be a like Herculean task to read in addition to whatever else I need to read that month. So it's big, but it is the continuation of Jamie and Claire's story. I do know that it's going to be set largely in America around the time of the American Revolution, but beyond that, I have avoided looking at the back cover just in case there are any spoilers. And my apologies if there is glare, because for whatever reason, this is the one mass market book in the collection that has like some metallic foiling thing going on. I have no idea why they did that. It's driving me crazy just a little bit. The next book is more historical fiction, and it is The Gilded Hour by Sarah Donati, and this has actually been on my physical TBR for a while, and I need to get to it because every time I look at it and I read the back, I am like so intrigued by the premise of it. So coincidentally, this book is also set in New York in the late, I think, 19th century, and the two characters are these women who have recently graduated from medical school, and so they're doctors in the 19th century, and it's really the story of their two like lives now that they are in the medical field. I think one of them ends up like taking in these 4 orphans, and then the other, I believe, is an obstetrician, and there's something that happens when she is helping a young mother, I think. So I don't know a ton about it, but again, this is a setting that's really interesting to me. It's New York, it's the 19th century, it's about women in the medical field in a time period when women as doctors was really a novelty and quite rare. So it sounds like something that is going to be right up my alley, to be quite honest. But it is a longer book. It is about 750 pages long. So it's definitely a thick one. But yes, this is a book that I need to get to at some point because yes, it has been collecting dust, but yes, it's still very, very appealing to me. Like, the story, I think, will be awesome. So, getting around to it at some point. Can't say when, but at some point. The next book is nonfiction. For any nonfiction lovers out there, it is Romanovs by Simon Sebag Montefiore, and I feel like this is one of these books that has made its rounds on nonfiction booktube. I feel like it's pretty well known and pretty well read. It is literally this like primer on the Romanov dynasty in Russia over the course of 300 years? Yeah, 1613 to 1918, when the Russian Revolution occurs. And this isn't going to be a book that like gives you a deep dive into any one particular figure in the Romanov dynasty, but I think it's supposed to be kind of a chronological like exploration of the different figures. So it really is more of a primer. I do have a feeling that this might potentially read a little bit more academic than basically any of the other books on this list, but Russia and Russian history is my thing, okay? Like, I love it. That's probably another part of my brand, Russia. But it's been a long time since I've really, like, dug into it. I recently read the Catherine the Great biography, but I really haven't sat down and read anything expansive on Russia since I studied it as like a history major. So I do think that this will be really interesting for me as someone who already has some background in the time period and someone who's just genuinely interested in the time period, but it's also big. This is a book that is jeez Louise. It's about 650 pages long, so it is a big, sweeping, like, nonfiction history book. What you gonna do? Like, it's covering 300 years. I don't know that you could expect it to be short. The next book is a classic I still have to get to, and it is Les Miserables by Victor Hugo, which currently and ordinarily resides on my classics shelf of my fiction bookcase, which is way up there out of everyone's view, but I do own quite a number of these Barnes & Noble's classics from high school, actually, when I was going through like a classics phase, and literally my mother one Christmas just gave me a massive box of the classics that I had requested, and this was one of them. I haven't read anything by Victor Hugo. I feel like everyone knows the story of Les Mis because of the musical, because of the movie, but it is set kind of in the aftermath of Napoleon I and is about Jean Valjean, who is wrongfully convicted and imprisoned, and is really the story of him like trying to redeem himself, set in the backdrop of this really frenetic time in Paris. So it's a book that I really want to get to. It's kind of one of these like bucket list books, and I know I will get to it at some point, but this of the books on this list is probably the one that I am most intimidated by, not gonna lie. It is just a little over 800 pages long, so it is pretty big for a classic, but I have certainly read longer. But yeah, this is one of the really big classics that I will need to get to and read before I die. And we have another classic, which is The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas. And I actually read The Count of Monte Cristo in high school, but it was definitely an abridged version because I know Count of Monte Cristo is massive and expansive. But I really enjoyed it. It was probably one of my favorite books that I had to read, like, as required reading during high school. So I really want to get to this because I love the Three Musketeers. Like, I watch every single Three Musketeers adaptation on screen that comes into existence. But yeah, this is the story of the Three Musketeers. You have Aramis, Athos, Porthos, and then of course you have the young swashbuckler of sorts. They're not pirates, but you get the visual, D'Artagnan, and they're all really trying to prevent this like evil, power-hungry cardinal from gaining more power than he's already kind of taken. And it's just one of these really epic like adventure stories, and there's romance. The character of Milady is always a personal favorite of mine, so I do really look forward to reading this because I do think it's going to be like a nice little like romp, as it were. Again, it is a thick boy, and the book is 700 pages on the nose. So yes, this is a book, a classic, that is still on my list, still kind of like a bucket list book, but probably this is going to get read a lot sooner than Les Mis, let's be real. The next book is a modern classic that I actually didn't know was a book, and that is From Here to Eternity by James Jones. I have seen this movie that came out, I want to say in the late 1940s or 1950s, a million times. It stars Burt Lancaster and Deborah Kerr and Monty Clift, and it has like that sex on a beach scene that I feel like everyone knows. It's shot in black and white. Burt Lancaster and Deborah Kerr are like rolling in the surf and making out, and it is just like a cinema masterpiece in that regard. Like, it's iconic. But I didn't know that the movie was based on a book until I happened to stumble across this on one of my like internet like searches on a book website. So this is a World War II story. I hesitate to call it historical fiction because I believe the book was published in 1951, so it wasn't that far out from the circumstances that the book covers, but it is set in Hawaii, and I know that one of the characters, Pruitt, he is like a champion boxer and bugler, but he refuses to join like his company's boxing team, and they give him the treatment in parentheses, like basically hazing him into hopefully submitting. And so it's this story of these soldiers in Hawaii, I think just before the attack on Pearl Harbor. But yeah, this is a story that I definitely have my eye on, partly because I really enjoy the movie, but also because I do love modern classics. This was a National Book Award winner in its day, but it's a World War II story from a completely different vantage point than I am familiar with. I don't think I've read any other World War II stories set in Hawaii at this point, but it's also a story that was written by someone who actually lived through it, and for them it was recent memory. So that to me is a really interesting point of view, and also why I tend to be drawn to the Irene Nemirovsky stories, which are set in Europe. So I do feel like this is going to be fantastic, but it is a book that is roughly 850 pages long, so it's thick. How many times am I going to say this in this video? I don't know, but we only have one more book, so if you've made it this far and I'm not grating your nerves by saying that every book is big, thick, or chonky, like, we're in good shape. And the final book that I want to talk about is more nonfiction. It is Cold Warriors, Writers Who Waged the Literary Cold War by Duncan White, and this is a book that is focusing on writers and sort of the intellectual struggles on both sides of the Iron Curtain, and I believe that some of these writers actually are kind of involved more actively in the Cold War as being like spies and like journalists and that sort of thing. But let me just read off some of the names of the authors that this book is going to talk about, because that was really the selling point for me. So we have a book that is about George Orwell, who I quite honestly could do without. I don't like his books. Stephen Spender, Mary McCarthy, Graham Greene, which I actually have one of his books up there and need to read it, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, a Russian who I don't think I've read anything by, but I know the name, John le Carre, Anna Akhmatova, who I definitely know about and am going to fangirl about when she features in this book, Richard Wright, Ernest Hemingway, Boris Pasternak, Gioconda Belli, and Václav Havel. The last two I really don't know all that much about, or to be honest, anything about, but that intrigues me all the more. So it has some really interesting figures that are going to be present in this book, and it says that here too are the spies, government officials, military officials, publishers, politicians, and critics who helped turn words into weapons at a time when the stakes could not have been higher. Like, my little, like, spy/espionage loving heart is aflutter. This sounds like it's going to be so fabulous. I just haven't had time to get to it up until this point. But it is a book that I am very, very excited about. It is a big book, you guessed it. It is around 700 pages, roughly. So again, a chonky boy, but my little heart is very excited to learn about how words were turned into weapons, because we always hear that old saying, that expression, the pen is mightier than the sword, but in this case, it's a reality. So yeah, I'm hyped. I'm very excited about this. My apologies. I'm gonna stop now. So yeah, those are the chonkiest books on my physical TBR. Do I have any idea when I'm gonna read them? Absolutely not. But they are there, and I am excited about every single one of them. It's just kind of a matter of finding time at this point. Like, not gonna lie, dedicating as much time as I am to reading the Outlander series this year means that a lot of other chunky books kind of need to be put on the back burner in the meantime, because there are only so many tomes that you can read in a given month. But anyway, let me know if any of these books are on your radar, or if they are now on your radar because of this video. What is the thickest book on your physical TBR? Let me know. I'm curious. But I do hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I'll see you next time. Bye!